Hello and welcome to this press briefing by the Jerusalem Press Club. I am Jonathan Beck, Director of Content. Our guest today is Colonel in Reserves, Dr. Ofer Guterman, a doctor of Middle Eastern Studies. He received his PhD on studying the political consciousness forged by Hamas among Palestinian society at the Department of Political Studies and the Department of Political Science at Ben-Gurion University. He also has a master's degree in security studies and a bachelor's degree in Arabic language and literature, both from Tel Aviv University. Currently, Guterman is a senior researcher in the From Conflict to Agreements research program at the INSS, the Institute for National Security Studies, and he's also a senior researcher at the Institute for the Research of Methodology of Intelligence, IRMI. In the past, he served as a senior analyst within the Israeli Defense Intelligence, including serving as the intelligence assistant to the military secretary of the Prime Minister. Good afternoon, Dr. Guterman, and thank you for giving us of your time.
Good afternoon. Nice to be here.
So yesterday we've seen the press conference with Trump and Netanyahu, and typically of Trump, it contained a lot of grandiose remarks and far-reaching goals. Can you say perhaps why this time, unlike different times in the past when Trump made similarly bombastic remarks, the situation might be different?
Well, first of all, I think the approach he took in this initiative is quite different from the one he had from the get-go since the beginning of his current cadention. I mean, at first, I think it was in February, he talked about building the Riviera and voluntarily immigrating Palestinians from Gaza and so on. And of course, this current initiative is quite different, stating this is not going to happen, and actually very much endorsing the Arab initiatives that we started to see since the beginning of his cadention, his second term, which was as a response to his very startling proposition of this Riviera and so on. So we saw those initiatives, and I believe that what we are seeing now is actually him endorsing the framework of these initiatives. From an Israeli perspective, I would say that by Israel, or by at least Prime Minister Netanyahu endorsing this initiative, it is a stark change from the up until now what we see as the current Israeli strategy toward the problem in Gaza. Because up until now, basically, the strategy was based on, let's say, a unilateral or bilateral engagement. So, I mean, Israeli government has seen it as a bilateral clash engagement between Israel and Hamas, and to be handled basically through the military effort. And by approving to this new initiative by President Trump, it is even, I would say, a paradigmatic change, because basically it says we are moving from a bilateral approach to a multilateral approach of instead of being, let's say, in a way, antagonist to the needs of our Arab partners. It is combining the Arab partners, seeing them in reality as partners to deal together with this problem, and also mitigating or fusing the military effort with other efforts, mainly the political one, diplomatic political one, and also the from on the let's say society level, as de-radicalization and reconstruction, civil reconstruction of Gaza. So all of these efforts are an understanding of the need to shift toward a multilateral approach and a not just a military effort, but rather the combination of the different efforts in one strategic vector, which is to not just trying to destroy Hamas, but to raise a new alternative instead of it.
Okay, thank you for this. Very clear. Wouldn't you say though that the current situation in Gideon's chariots B with Israeli tanks in Gaza City, I think it was a week and a half ago, when a lot of skyscrapers were leveled, isn't Trump also leveraging those actual achievements on the ground to sort of do you see those efforts as separate? I mean, or interdependent? What the IDF is achieving on the ground in Gaza City and what the Americans are offering in the White House.
Of course, the military effort is contributing to the general effort, even looking forward, should contribute even further down the road to really put those words into action. In this regard, I would suggest putting an emphasis on clause 17 in those 20 points, which says that in the case Hamas doesn't agree to this proposition, to this initiative, the initiative can go on without Hamas consent. So, and that IDF would transfer territories within Gaza Strip, which Israel believes are pured from Hamas. They can move it to the hands of this new international task force, this new technocratic administration, while the other territories in the Gaza Strip where Hamas is still alive and kicking, IDF can move forward with the military effort in order to suppress Hamas. So this is, I think, another interesting, maybe the most interesting point in this initiative, which basically takes the decision making, let's say, on the future of this conflict from the hands of Hamas, and basically shifting it to a decision making made by Israel, United States, and the international community, but basically Arab states, let's say above the head of Hamas. So I believe this is a very interesting, very important point in this initiative.
Okay, thank you for this. So first, I have already two journalists from separate outlets asking, what do you think Hamas will say to this initiative? But before that, I would like to ask regarding this possibility of transferring some parts of Gaza to the Peace Commission's hands. How viable is this? Is there any part of the territory that today is ready to be handed over to multilateral Arab hands?
I would say that the most northern and southern parts of Gaza would be the first candidates for that. I think in the northern Gaza and the Rafah district, Rafah districts are the two places where IDF has the best, let's say, control, and Hamas is most suppressed. Perhaps IDF would say, if we're really shifting hands, perhaps we need to do some, I would say, a last round of intense raid or something like that. But basically, I think those would be the two districts I would suggest would be the first for that. But, you know, we have to be very careful, because up until now, it's mainly a very vague and general initiative. I don't believe that there is right now any in-depth protocol that takes those 20 short clauses and fills it with real mechanisms. So we have to see whether it really, you know, transfers into this more mature phase. We are in a very early beginning of something that might not even mature. Now, regarding Hamas's response. So basically, yesterday, Hamas first said we got the initiative and we will learn it in a good faith or something like that. And just I think an hour ago or so, I saw that they said we're not giving yet our response, but we have a lot of reservations, which is of course this is what we should have expected, because I think that basically this is not in Hamas's eyes, this is not a good proposal. Basically, it leaves them without any future in Gaza, nor not a political future, nor a military operational future. We can dive into the details if you want, but basically that's the bottom line. So I don't see why Hamas would need to say yes to this initiative. Now, we already saw that the Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza Strip said no, said this is another Israeli-American conspiracy for taking Gaza. The Houthis, all the like-minded friends of Hamas said this is a total, disaster for Hamas. And so I believe it is more likely that Hamas would not say yes. On the other hand, because there is such a large consent of support of the Arab states in this initiative, it would be hard for Hamas to say a strict no. So perhaps the most likely response would be yes, but okay, these are the conditions we want, so on and so forth. For example, it says from launching it in 72 hours, all the Israeli kidnapped, all the hostages should be returned to Israeli hands. Now, this basically takes all the cards from Hamas's hands. So, I mean, it would be foolish from his side to agree to such a proposal. And last word on this issue of Hamas response, I think mainly due to this clause 17, and that says that if Hamas doesn't agree to this initiative, it can still move forward. I think Hamas, after a period that he was, let's say, on a good wave, after the starvation campaign that had such a great success, and after the attack in Qatar, which was, again, from Hamas's eyes, success to embarrass Israel, he felt good. And I think that this initiative takes Hamas back to a negative point where if he accepts the initiative, well, it's not good for him. If he doesn't accept it, again, it's not good for him, because now Israel has, in a way, of course, a renewed American consent and also Arab agreement to the further military operation of Israel in order to take down Hamas wherever it still operates within Gaza.
Okay, so you mentioned the strike in Qatar, and also we didn't discuss the phone call. There's been many theories about the strike in Qatar a couple of weeks ago, and also yesterday there was the phone call with Netanyahu apologizing supposedly for accidentally also killing a Qatari citizen. Qatar is the main point here. How, like, the Arab consent of many countries is easy to understand. Egypt, Saudi Arabia. How come Turkey and Qatar specifically, which hosts Hamas, agreed to this kind of turning their backs on the group? Is the fact that Israel dared to attack there related to it in any way? And of course, the phone call was probably the finisher for this, no?
Yeah, well, first of all, I must say I'm not a Qatar nor Turkey expert, but I think in the case of Qatar, Qatar is a very opportunistic country. That's why not just now we have seen seen it backing Hamas, and on the other hand, approving the Egyptian proposal initiative for Gaza, also approving the Saudi-French initiative to Gaza. So we've seen Qatar playing both sides all through this campaign, and not just in this current state of affairs. So Qatar, I think it's part of the Qatari game. Now, of course, the let's say the phone call between Netanyahu and the Qatari leader is something that I guess helped, to put things aside, to, let's say, clear the bad blood a bit. And Qatar, in any state of affairs, if it understands that this is where the current events are moving to this direction of this Trump initiative, it would ride the wave. It wouldn't be antagonistic to it. So in any case, Qatar wants to stay relevant as a mediator, as an influencer, to have an impact in what is happening in Gaza, and so on and so forth. So that's why I would say we see and we could expect Qatar to act this way. Regarding Turkey, I'm less familiar with the current affairs. I guess, again, Turkey, it also has to do with the relationship between Erdogan and Trump, and also the need of Turkey to act in this way, maybe as a pro with relationship to with the linkage to other affairs between Turkey and the US. But I'm less familiar with the Turkey issue in order to go into depth of the current policy of Turkey in this affairs.
Okay, thank you. So still about Hamas though, then now with Qatar sort of, as you said, it rode this wave of the Arab consensus. Hamas's DNA would make it say no because it's a resistance movement, but where can it go from here? With Israel in control of, the proposal as it was presented yesterday by Trump was more of a dictate than a proposal. Everyone is here in on it. You can say yes or you can say no. What does it mean for them saying no? It's not like they can go to Iran and get rearmed. So they're kind of stuck, no? In a sense. What's the way out of it from their point of view?
Well, so we are talking about a scenario where Hamas is basically saying no or yes, but, which seems as a no.
Yes,
That's the question.
and regarding the yes, but one may guess that Hamas will try to disrupt this clause 17 with attacks like 2 days ago when they attached an IED with a magnet to a tank and sort of small scale terror attacks. I mean, if they oppose it, they're bound to fight it all along the way, no?
Well, if they oppose it, the fighting remains, and the clashes between Israeli forces and Hamas forces will continue. Maybe not in all of Gaza, but at least in part of it, and Hamas will continue its operational efforts, its guerrilla and terror attacks. So in a way,
And what if they
nothing
say,
new here.
and if they say yes, but then how can that look from a Hamas perspective?
So let's say, well, it can be a yes, but, which really, for any objective eye, if there is someone like that, would seem like basically a refusal. So if it's a refusal, we are on the path of in renewed engagements, military engagements between Israel and Hamas. If it says yes, but, and asks for things that might seem reasonable, then perhaps we'll go into a phase of negotiations, of trying to reach a point of consent on several issues between Hamas and basically in the US administration. It might reach a point which I think now seems very unlikely, but so many unlikely events have occurred in those last 2 years that I'm not willing to predict. But in the case that Hamas says a yes that is actually a yes that we can work with, then and we move from I think we will be quite a time in the place of trying to resolve these issues and trying to reach agreements with Hamas on those certain clauses. And then if and only if we reach the phase of really implementing it, I think that because it's very vague. I mean, those 20 points are very general, very vague, without real mechanisms. For example, disarmament of Hamas or demilitarization of Gaza. I think there is no real mechanism here. It's just vague or general wants. I mean, we want this, we want that.
Just the headline, yeah.
Yeah, just a headline. So it will take, then you'll start seeing the blame game. I mean, Hamas will say, well, Israel is not withdrawing air forces like it needs to. We will say Hamas is not handing over its weapons as it should. We will have those, in certain clashes, military clashes here and there. It would be um, negotiations while firing, I guess.
But interestingly, Israel in the points as they were published, finally last night after all the speculations and the leaks, Israel doesn't have clear-cut timelines. It needs to withdraw forces gradually, etc. And Hamas does have the 72 hours, which is a very clear 3 days. And of course, what is missing is when it starts. Like, when does the countdown start to this? They
So I
said
guess
goodnight. It started essentially.
no, it didn't start because we are waiting for Hamas response. So in the case Hamas says yes, I think that's not the issue. I mean, everybody could agree on a certain day and hour that it starts. But the bigger problem is that, as we said, these are just headlines also regarding the timelines. So except for Hamas handing over all of its cards, all its leverage in 72 hours, and then what happens? So that's why it's hard to see Hamas agreeing to these terms. Israel, according to this initiative, should withdraw as two main phases of withdrawal. One is synchronized with handing over getting back all the Israeli hostages, and then synchronizing with it a withdrawal of IDF forces into railroad lines, and then there should be a second phase of withdrawal, which is not termed in any timeline, and it should be termed by the depth of implementation of the demilitarization. And again, this is very vague, but the principle itself, I mean, maybe it's a spoiler, but basically, from an Israeli perspective, it's a good clause because it says we're not withdrawing without any mechanism. We are withdrawing only after we are sure that this territory is safe from Hamas and we're handing it over into this international force, and maybe this police, like Palestinian local police, that should be also built. It's also written in the initiative. So in this regard, it's at least in Israeli eyes, it's a good clause. But again, this is something that it's hard to see Hamas agreeing to.
Okay.
And also, sorry, and also after the second withdrawal, still according to this initiative, Israel remains in control in the borders, meaning the Philadelphia corridor, the border between Israel, Gaza and Egypt, and what we call the perimeter, which is the border from between Israel and Gaza from the Gaza side. And I think the initiative says it, and the Prime Minister Netanyahu said it very clearly. This is something that a territory that we will be in control of for, let's say, years, which is, an eternity in Middle Eastern terms.
Yeah, in that sense, the deal certainly ensures Israel's security. I wanted to ask you, Israelis this morning, of course, after all you said about Hamas, saying yes, saying no, thinking about it, considering it positively, did not wake up this morning thinking the war is over, because as we all know, the hostages are still in Hamas' hands, etc. Will this plan, though, will Israel's response to this plan shift its diplomatic situation among its, I would say, traditional Western allies, which have since kind of turned against it? And I would like to add an emphasis. Do you think countries like, Spain, France, Britain, etc., still condemn Israel when this plan by Trump enjoys the support of, of Turkey and Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Egypt, etc.?
Yeah, so I think basically we, among the analysts in the institute, we've talked about it today, and actually we had some controversy between us. Some believe that it wouldn't really change the matters because it wouldn't change, in essence, the basic legitimization problem that Israel has in the current fighting. Because if Hamas says no, and let's say he says no, which is the more probable scenario. So if Hamas says no, and we continue to fight, and by clause 17 that says that we can do it, then still we'll see, the let's say harsh pictures of civilian killed and so on, which is part of the problem. And this is what, and never, not going into the question of collateral damage. Is it legitimate, not legitimate? From a propaganda and then from a let's say from legitimate
Public diplomacy perspective.
from public diplomacy eyes, this is
Okay.
not good. Okay, this is not good for Israel. So if the fighting continues, so we have, let's say, one camp among us, the analysts, that thinks that this would be the larger issue. I mean, this would be continue the legitimation problem of Israel. I, on the other hand, think that it might change, not dramatically, not to the other side, but it can change, because I think part of the problem is not just the cruelty of the fighting. It's the point that up until now, I think many didn't see the rationale behind the fighting. I mean, what would it bring with it? I mean, you're not building, I mean, Israel, you're not agreeing to any new alternative, moderate alternative instead of Hamas. So you're just continuing to fight without an end. What's the point here? And also we saw the let's say remarks or declarations by Israeli senior figures talking about annexing the Gaza Strip, voluntary immigration of Palestinians, and so on. And I think that this initiative, which formally the Prime Minister of Israel accepted, says clear cut. It says Israel will not annex the Gaza Strip. Israel will not conquer the Gaza Strip, meaning for conquer it for good. Will not conquer Gaza Strip. Will not annex Gaza Strip. Will not voluntarily encourage voluntarily immigration. Every Palestinian in Gaza can stay in Gaza. So I think it can make a change in the legitimacy of our actions. And of course, as I said, if we see Arab states again, accepting this initiative, this framework. And also, I think this framework might be because Israel is basically also saying if the PA transforms itself and does this, very strict reforms it should take, and if we stabilize Gaza with de-radicalization and reconstruction and so on, this builds the terms for a viable path toward a Palestinian state. This is something that Prime Minister Netanyahu has rejected up until yesterday. This is new. And I think that it can also maybe lead the way to, renewing the peace processes with the other Arab states, of enlarging the Abraham Accords and so on. So it may have a shift. It might be dramatic even, but it might be not dramatic, but I believe it's not the same. I mean, maybe the operation on the ground will look the same, but the strategic framework is or could be quite different, and it changes matters.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, the Abraham Accords, as Abraham, he was having fun with it yesterday. I have a couple of questions from journalists here. First of all, I'm not sure if you think you're qualified to answer to that, but are we likely to see another Israeli strike on Hamas members like elsewhere across the Middle East, like in Egypt, Qatar, or Turkey? Do you think? And the second one is, let's get them one by one. You know what? This.
I think, first of all, strictly in Qatar, it seems that if the declarations are correct, then Israel has, or Prime Minister Netanyahu has vowed now not to strike again in Qatar. So I think it takes Qatar out of the question.
As an aside, by the way, we can assume that it wasn't Netanyahu's idea to call on the phone and apologize, right?
I don't know, but I guess it wasn't his. I mean, I guess it was something between President Trump and the Athani, and Trump, encouraged, let's say, Prime Minister Netanyahu to have this talk. So, on the one hand, I would want to say that it's very unlikely to see it, at least in the near future, in such, let's say, places like Qatar, Turkey, Egypt, which is, very, very, very sensitive. On the other hand, I didn't believe that we will attack in Qatar, but we did it. So, again, I mean, these events for me as a former intelligence analyst, I'm not willing to predict on such matters, but it seems, I would say, less likely after it happened, the attack in Doha, and at least in Qatar, where Prime Minister Netanyahu was sworn not to do it again.
Okay. The second question is, which incentive would Israel have to hand over control of, for example, the Rafah area or others to the ISF? I think it's the acronym of the new security forces that will be there.
Yes.
If Hamas doesn't hand over the hostages, and while I mentioned it, it's been assessed on Israeli media today that Hamas is not going to say no, we're not giving them back, but stuff like, we lost touch with their captors, we can't find them, all sorts of foot dragging, etc.
Again, can you clarify the question?
Like if Hamas says yes, but then actually stalls
Okay.
in handing over the hostages, or gives a much lower number of living hostages and says it lost touch, or pulls tricks, etc., that are meant to keep some hostages in their hands, what incentive does Israel have then to do its part of the deal and gradually hand over parts and withdraw?
I guess it wouldn't have an incentive. I mean, if we'll be in a state where Israel stands firm on its demand that all hostages will be brought back in totality within 72 hours, and Hamas stalls and so on, I guess Israel would say, okay, then we are not willing to withdraw and make any concession.
Okay, understood. Thank you so much, Dr. Guterman, for your time. Today we are a day before Yom Kippur. The entire country, I think, is waiting with bated breath for a response from Hamas officially. But I think today Israel is in a slightly better position on the world map than it was yesterday, don't you think? Even without anything changing on the ground, it's a slight move for the better.
The bottom line is, yes, I concur. I think that this initiative has its problems even from Israeli eyes. I mean, first of all, it doesn't bring. It's more likely that it won't bring us the hostages back because Hamas would say no. And again, we haven't seen, behind the headlines, real mechanisms of demilitarization and disarmament of Hamas and so on. So nothing new here. And also regarding the humanitarian aid, the statement is that the UN will again, with the Red Cross, will again lead the efforts of bringing the humanitarian aid inside. And I think here Israel should insist on marginalizing UNRWA, which shouldn't be a part of it, not just because it's it's a cooperation with Hamas, but also because it symbolizes the Palestinian conscience of the right of return and of not wanting to settle the refugee problem. So I think we need to see that this issue is settled. But again, I think, yes, that we are today in a bit better place than we were yesterday because Israel has agreed to things that it rejected up until yesterday, and because Trump administration or Trump himself, President Trump, has put forward a proposition which is basically, I think, right and good. And I think that it can improve, at least to some extent, the legitimization of Israel. It so finally really touches the point of building something new, a new alternative, moderate alternative in Gaza and restructuring and so on. It removes, let's say, those, not to be blunt, unrealistic aims of voluntarily immigration and annexing Gaza and so on. It puts more pressure on Hamas, and it might lead to renewed engagement of enlarging the Abraham Accord. So yes, I think it's at least a slight better than we were yesterday.
Okay, thank you very much for this, Dr. Guterman. I'm sorry we're out of time for further questions. I appreciate your time. I want to mention that this will be on our YouTube channel later today or tomorrow. Wish all of the Jewish or the keeping fast journalists online an easy fast on Yom Kippur. And just to mention, also, I would like to thank Ali Naor, the producer of this webinar, and many of our other webinars. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.